Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and our Meet the Goat series while I groom goats. Oh, except I made him too tall. Good, we'll be talking about this in a second. So on the stand today we have, who do we have? My brain is fried, oh my goodness. On the stand today we have Full Circle Santa Baby. Santa, as we call him, is a master champion, also carries a best in show title. He falls into the category of mom stinks and did not groom him as quickly as I should have. He's not quite as much of a hot mess express as Flash was in our last round of videos, but this one could also end up being a two-parter. Not sure. We'll see how it goes. This section here is a little rough, but I don't see a whole lot of that through his coat, so we may get lucky. Anyway, as I was saying, Santa is a master champion. He is a best in show, so he is absolutely retired from the show ring and has been. He's 6 years old. I actually called him 5 years old in one of my Flash videos, so there you go. He's 6 years old now. And Santa has been featured in my herd extensively, like a lot, meaning I have a lot of goats in my herd right now that have him as a father, which is amazing because his genetics are amazing and I wanted that. But it also means that I'm really struggling now to breed him to folks. I kind of don't have anybody left to breed him to except for my older does. And certainly, you know, I kept some of the kids from previous breedings of those pairings. So those pairings make beautiful babies. But it's not putting his genetics into the herd the way it used to, right? Those babies are being sold. There are a lot of my babies go as pets just because that's the market that's here. And people don't want to be showing goats. There's a lot of work in that. So at any rate, Santa is going to be leaving the farm and he is going to become a herd sire for a new breeder that is just starting up. Not so local, so he's taking a bit of a road trip, not super far. He'll still be on the East Coast, but he's going a couple states away, and he's going to be going home with a couple of does from my herd that are not related to him or each other at all, as a really nice set of starter goats for this herd. And I'm super excited about it for so many reasons, right? One is it validates my breeding, that they can be at a point where my goats, my genetics are at a point where they can legitimately, I mean, certainly anybody can, but these guys can legitimately be seen as the right foundation genetics for a new herd. Now, of course, that herd will add their own genetics to it. They'll add some genetics from other farms, right? And it'll become their line eventually, but it's starting with my lines. And that's so amazingly exciting to me. You have no idea. So Santa, you're going to see him for this video, maybe another one if it takes two times to get him groomed. And then he's leaving the farm and he will not be in our breeding program this year being 2025. But he will have his own harem to breed in 2025. So there will be Santa Baby 2026 kids out there, just not here. And I'm so excited about that. Have I mentioned that? Yeah, I think I did. So let me talk to you about Santa a little bit as I work on some of these under messes here. Santa, I bought as a baby, and he was really what I'll call my first, I won't call him an impulse buy because I talked about the thought process I have for picking bucks. But he was one who, you know, I knew his breeder. I knew the breeder's goats. I've laid hands on the breeder's goats. I've seen the breeder's goats in shows. I had no intention of necessarily buying a buck at that point. I didn't need a new buck at that moment. I probably would have needed one in another year or two just based on my breeding program. But at that time, again, 6 years ago, I didn't need another buck. I wasn't in the market for another buck. But the breeder posted a picture of this little Spudnik when he was just born, and he caught my eye. And I was perusing. I said, "Oh my God, that's a gorgeous buck, right?" Like, and how do you say that when they're a day old? You really can't. But I think it was the markings, the colorations, it just caught my eye. So I looked into the pedigree, and his pedigree had a lot of animals in it that I knew. I had seen at shows. I had talked to, right? Like I talked to the animals. Animals I had really had a chance to know. And so I didn't jump on him. Like I said, I wasn't in the market for a buck. We were really, at that point, trying to be very cautious about how we grew our herd, because my husband and I knew we did not want a herd of, 20, 30 goats. We were not in a position, and still are not in a position, to be able to properly maintain that many animals. So buying a buck would have been irresponsible. It would have been inappropriate and just not what we were doing. But over the course of the next couple of weeks, as this little buck started to grow up and pictures were posted, I just kept coming back to him. And I just kept coming back to him over and over and over again. And when that happens, for me anyway, that usually means something. Sometimes it just means I've hit a little bit of an obsessive point and I need to stop. Other times it means, I've done my research. I'm pretty well organized. I know the future. I'm thinking 3 or 4 years ahead with my goats and my herd. And my little brain somewhere in the back was saying this guy needed to be a part of that plan. Meanwhile, he had been sold. So it really didn't matter at that point. But amazingly, he became available again before he ever left his breeder's farm, before he ever was weaned. For whatever reason, it just didn't work out for him and his original purchaser. And that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I reached out and I said, "Mark, I'm sold. He's mine. Bring him to the next show. And, we'll go from there." So that's what happened. It certainly wasn't irresponsible in the sense that I knew I could maintain him. I had the room. We had the ability to feed, water, etc. There was no worries there. It just wasn't, quote unquote, written in my annual business plan, so to speak, to purchase another buck that particular year. I can't tell you how happy I am that happened. I can't tell you how thrilled I am with this buck, how much I'm going to miss him when he leaves, but how happy I am that he is going to continue to be out in the world contributing to this breed. And that to me was more important than my pleasure at just having him on the farm. So a couple things about him. He is one of the most gentle, sweet animals I have ever met. Anytime I have babies that need to be in with the boys instead of in with the does, so, boys that haven't been castrated yet but are too old to be in with the does, anytime I brought a baby home, which wasn't very often, this guy is their best friend instantly. He's not only their best friend, he's their protector, he's their watch guard, he's, they sleep curled up next to him. He is just everything you want in a buck. He's completely and totally handleable. He does not argue with you about anything. He doesn't fight his hoof trims. I mean, my God, he's just a dream. And I love him to death. And I've had him since he was a wee baby. And I obviously showed him in the ring a lot of years. Well, For a buck, it's a lot of years. To get him to his Master Championship Best in Show. And I couldn't have been more pleased with all the results that we got from him, from his kids, and from what he's done to my herd in terms of improvements year on year. So it's a little bittersweet to be doing this grooming, my last grooming with Santa, while he gets ready to leave for greener pastures to be the king somewhere else. But it's the right thing to do. He's 6, so he's got, 3 to 4 more breeding years in him, possibly more, but again, for an operation like me, I need to be sure that my exposures are going to take and they're fertile and viral. So if he were to stay here, he'd have about 3 more years on the breeding docket. If he moves to a new farm, could be 4 more years, could be 5 more years. If they collect semen from him, and certainly they can, it could be a lot more years, right? So wonderful. The other thing with him and here is that as I continue to keep progeny from him, I have less and less people less and less goats to breed him to, which makes it really hard because he is, he's in his prime. He should be being bred, and he's not being bred to more than 2 or 3 does anymore because I don't have anybody that's not related to him. So I did put him up on the market, and he is going to a new farm to be a herd sire. And I just am so thrilled about that. You have no idea. Yes, you do, because I've said it a zillion times. So enough about that. Why else do I love him? I love his coat. He has very little undercoat. I'm working hard at it right now. And that's really at the bottom pieces. You'll notice that even the side that I haven't touched yet, his top doesn't have the same level of cashmere throwing off of him that Flash had, or that even some of my does have. It's really toward the bottom. And the reason it's stuck toward the bottom is because as it shed out, it did exactly what it's supposed to do. It moved down these beautiful silky locks, and then it got to the point where bucks pee on themselves, right? The bottom. And it's stuck. So that's what I'm working on now, and that's why it's a little bit more challenging down there, and why it seems to be taking me a long time. But when I talk about, and I look at his coat, right? His coat is texture-wise extremely silky, which is exactly what it should be. His length of coat is floor length, or was floor length. He did get a Master Champion trim a couple years ago. It is growing back, unlike Flash's, which never grew back. Santa's is growing back, but it's taking time. And frankly, a lot of times, at this time of the year, I do another little trim up around the bottom and the belly where all the urine goes, because it's just easier that way. Easier on him, easier on me, and there's no reason why he can't be trimmed up a bit because he's not going back in the ring. So his coat is stunning. He passes that coat genetics on to every kid he's had. I've kept kids from him. I have seen other kids from him that I've sold in pictures. And every kid that has come from him has an amazing length of coat, has strong, silky locks like he does. So he passes it on consistently. And that's kind of buck you want, that has a good trait, a good characteristic, and is consistent in the ability to pass that to his kids, no matter who he's bred to. And he's got that in spades. So, love him for that reason. Love everything that he brought into my herd and did to improve my herd. And I'm excited that he's going to be able to continue bringing that to this breed and to someone else's herd. So that's Santa. A little good news, a little sad news, right? But happy, happy, happy for him and for his new owners. And yes, I am grooming him up and taking all this time and spending all this time to do it, because I would never want an animal to leave my farm not ready to go. They will still have to obviously groom him and maintain him just like I do, but he's not going to go to their location as a hot mess express. That's just not going to happen from my farm, which means I have to do his spring cleanup, which stinks a little bit, right? It'd be nice to pass that to somebody else, but it is my responsibility, and I let it get this way, and that means I need to clean it. All right, so that's enough about that for now. Let's talk a little bit about the grooming stand. When I did Lotus's video, which now was several weeks ago, if you haven't seen it, feel free to look back. I got a couple of questions about the stand, and I had talked about the tools that I use, the brushes that I use, and I didn't really talk about the stand. I mentioned the fact that it's a bit excessive and not necessary. I mentioned that I'm not going to recommend necessarily this stand, but I did get some questions on it, so I thought I would address it. So the stand is from DS Livestock. I'm not going to link it below. You guys can Google it if you want to. I wasn't thrilled with their customer service. I am thrilled with their product. I just wasn't thrilled with their customer service, and we'll leave it at that. It's an expensive stand. It was an investment. For many, many years, I used what's called sort of a standard aluminum or wrought iron milking stand. It was just a stand that you had to lift the goat up onto about maybe a foot and a half off the ground. And it had the same features then as this, meaning that it had a head halter to hold them in place. It did not have side rails like this one does. And it certainly didn't have the ability to rise like this one does. But I used that for 6 years. I still have that stand. It's in my trailer. It goes with me to the shows. It's the stand I use when I'm grooming them at the shows. It's portable, it's lightweight, it's small. It's exactly what you need when you just want to get a quick grooming. What was happening though is when I was getting older and the goats were getting a little bit better, right? So they were spending a little bit more time on the stand. And I decided that, this is something that I needed to invest in. And I needed to invest in it for my health and well-being, as well as for making the process a bit more efficient, right? So this stand is a scissor lift. It's a hand crank. So you saw at the beginning of the video, I had him cranked up a little too high, so I cranked him down a couple. It's a hand crank with just a standard jack. And the scissor lift allows for, the infinite amount of up and down in different increments. So if I have a taller goat or a smaller goat, I can put them at the height that I need them to work on. And I can change their height. If I'm working on their hooves, I might put them up a little higher so their hooves are right at eye level. Or I'll put them down like he is now, where his back is sort of at eye level, and I'm working at arm level on his coat, as opposed to working on, bent over or even squatting in a position, right? And it gives me the ability to spend more time with them without being exhausted from picking them up and putting them on a stand and bending over. It gives my back a break. It gives my knees a break. And it just gives me, once again, the ability to do this with the appropriate amount of investment of energy in the right places, which is in maintaining their coat and their hooves versus picking them up to put them on a stand, fighting with them to stand on the stand, bending over, squatting, kneeling in places that you don't really want to be squatting and kneeling. The other thing I like about this stand, and I do like the stand, so please don't get me wrong, I really do like the stand. I just didn't like the service from the company that I got the stand from, is the side rails. These side rails, which you see me put on and take off, They are a really nice extra to have. They are absolutely not required, but what they do is they prevent the goat from stepping off the stand on that side that I'm not working, right? So they want to kind of lean away from what's happening on this side while I'm working. I don't blame them, right? And a lot of times without side rails, they'll step that foot off, they'll start to fall a little bit, they can't right themselves, and you have to run around to the other side, catch them, and put them back on, right? Doesn't sound like the biggest or the best way to do things. And it really isn't. In that shorter stand, it doesn't have side rails. They do step off it all the time. It does make it difficult because I'm constantly having to run to switch over to the side that they've now stepped off and are dangling off of, put them back on the stand, go back to where I was working. So it just takes more time. It gives, adds a little bit of risk to the process. And overall just doesn't make sense when I had the ability, thanks to my real job, not the farm, but the job that pays the bills, to save up and invest in myself a little bit. And that's what I did. And this was for me, right? This was something that was not required for the goats. It is absolutely not required for you to have in order to maintain goats. It was for me to make this process more manageable, to make this process more realistic on my body, and to give me the ability to keep my goats maintained the way I do without exhausting myself and, hurting my back is probably the biggest thing, right? So that's why I did it. And that's why I didn't really want to talk about it in the last meeting, because it's a bit of an extravagant investment. I think it was like, at the time I bought it, about $700, which is ridiculously expensive for a stand. It's it's going to last forever, right? I have this now going on almost 3 years, and it's, despite the fact that it's dirty, it's still like new. I did have to replace the jack that it came with, which was just another $100. Just like I say, that, it was kind of frustrating. That was the customer service issue I was talking about. The jack should not have failed that quickly, but the jack that they used was not designed for this purpose, and it failed, and they were having failures of the jack pretty consistently with every stand that they sold. The stand has been discontinued. They no longer sell it. They were able to give me an appropriate replacement part so that I could not give it to me, give me the name of an appropriate replacement part so I could buy it. But this is where I was not thrilled with the customer service, right? 2 years in, this jack portion should not have failed. I should not have had to buy a new jack. I should not have had to take that jack and have it welded to the stand so that it would continue to run the winch the way it was supposed to. It was a bit of a pain in the rear end. It was a small investment in terms of cash, but on top of an expensive stand, I didn't like that response. I wasn't thrilled with that response. I think that they could have done something different. Like, I don't know, if I have to re-weld a jack on because the jack failed, at least replace the jack and send me a new jack rather than tell me to just go buy a new jack, right? I think that's what I was looking for, and I didn't get that. Really didn't get much of anything other than, here's the part number, best of luck to you, on an expensive stand. So that's why I'm not recommending or linking it. That's my only complaint with it. Now that the new jack is in place, it's amazing. I'm actually thrilled with it. It's better than the old jack. It moves smoother. It's less it's less effort for me to crank them up and down. Still a lot of rotations, right? So it takes about 60 to 70 rotations to get them to the height that I have them. So, you could probably, if you're really handy, you can come up with a way to attach a drill to it so that that wouldn't have to happen manually. But overall, that's the reason that I didn't talk about the stand in the same way. Now, his side is done and gorgeous. I think I'm going to probably stop here for part 1 because I think this already ran longer than I planned because I got a couple of stuck pieces down here at the bottom. So we'll leave it at Introduction to Santa and talking about the stand. And on part 2, which will be his next side, we'll do a little bit more talking, maybe about the channel. Maybe about the channel, what I want to do with this thing, why I even do this. If you've stuck around this long, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. Every watch minute counts. It really does. So even if you only watch a few minutes, it helps. Every like, every subscribe, every comment helps boost the signal on these guys, and it helps fill the hay feeder someday. So I really appreciate you being a part of my community, and we'll catch you at the next one. Bye for now.